Awesome.
Anyway,
Yep.
let's talk about court packing because the Democrats they want to pack the court now. And some people could say, why do they care about packing the court? The court hasn't been all that obliging to conservatives. But I think the court remains kind of an obstacle to them having full control of the government. They've got the House narrowly, but they still have it. They have the Senate, they got the presidency. They want the court, and so they've got this kind of, I would say, cosmetic, somewhat bogus commission stacked with left-wing academics. But this is a familiar story for you, and I want you to talk a little bit about how you've heard this song before.
Right. Well, I've heard a lot of these songs before. There are a lot of parallels, and we're talking about Venezuela, parallels with Venezuela. As you know, I have been telling you about these parallels for a very long time. One of them is court packing, which of course I didn't really understand court packing as a parallel until I started hearing it coming out of their mouth, like recently, right?
You mean the Democrats?
The Democrats, and then when they were asked about it, they're like, "Oh, no, I'm not going to do that," or wait till after we are elected, and then we'll tell you the truth, right? So yes, so this story goes way back to Hugo Chavez and now Maduro. So when in 2004 in Venezuela they had a recall election, as you know, because Hugo Chavez was essentially trampling all over the Venezuelan constitution. Venezuela was a republic, and it had a two-party system, and although they weren't the best two parties, they were the only two parties that Venezuela had. And so when Hugo Chavez came in, he started quickly changing things. But he really needed a court to finalize that change, right? And to finally push the Constitution beyond repair. So in 2004, when they had a recall election, actually ended up being rigged. They were using these machines called Smartmatic machines. Not Dominion, Smartmatic machines that actually rigged the vote for Hugo Chavez.
Well, let's spell it out because it's relevant to our situation.
Right.
The opposition party against Chavez was leading in the polls 60-40.
Right. They were leading in the polls. They had all these exit polls, and the opposition was pretty sure that they were going to end up winning this election. And sometime at around maybe midnight, 2:00 in the morning, the counting stopped, all of that, kind of ceased, and it ended up that apparently, and this is, some of the opposition found this out later, the algorithms were completely, went haywire because it switched to Hugo Chavez winning this election and him not being ousted as they wished. And so anyway, he ended up not being recalled. And the same year, Chavez's allies held the majority in the National Assembly. And so they passed a law that increased the number of judges, Supreme Court judges, from 20 to 32. Of course, all in favor of Chavez's policies.
So in other words, in one stroke, they got 12 justices. They got an immediate decisive majority. And they now control the judicial branch of government, right?
Right.
Would it be fair to say that the Venezuela's judiciary ceased to be an independent judiciary?
Yeah, but it also, fast forward to 2015, and after Chavez's death in 2013, Maduro, his successor, did the exact same thing. He also put in 16 more judges, all for the regime. And virtually, they made it kind of impossible for any of the Constitution to even be intact. And so this was really the end of the Venezuelan Republic as they knew it. The court stripped the National Assembly, which is the Congress, of all its power. So basically, it's the Maduro regime and the court, and they make all the decisions. And they stripped the rights and liberties of Venezuelans forever. They're non-existent. And then to top it off, last summer, summer of 2020, they did this. They passed this court appointed, assembly called the National Electoral Council, and this is the agency responsible for conducting elections. And so this is to ensure that no one ever again will question the integrity of the Venezuelan elections.
I think it's interesting how in Venezuela the power seemed to move not just to one party, but to one man. So that Hugo Chavez, for example, could say things like, I want to change the Venezuelan flag. I don't like the fact that Venezuela is on Central Time Zone. I'm going to create my own time zone. I mean, these arbitrary decisions by one person, but now you've got an apparatus of rubber stampism, you could call it, both in the legislature and on the court, so that this one man's decisions are identified as the decisions of the people. And constitutional formalities are maintained even though the Constitution itself has disappeared.
That is correct. He pretends to follow a non-existent constitution.
That's remarkable. And do you think, I mean, we have seen now in numerous areas, from wealth confiscation, proposals for gun confiscation, proposals to change the electoral system here under H.R. 1, which would essentially federalize the election process. Is this just sort of one more nail in the coffin on the part of the left here to sort of take us on the road to Venezuela?
I believe it is. I believe it is. And this is a very scary parallel. And if we don't wake up as Americans, it's going to happen here.
And it's happened pretty quickly in Venezuela, right? I mean, in other words, Chavez was elected in the late 90s.
Right. So
here we are 20 years later, and the society is effectively
right.
gone.
Effectively gone. Really, it took 2 decades, really, to just completely, decimate that country.
I mean,
and as you know, and I've shown you photos of a very good friend of mine whose husband is a general. And so there are 2 societies in Venezuela right now, and we can talk about that later. But when you see photos, you're like, wait a minute. I thought they were eating their pets, and some are, and others are not.
Others are eating filet mignon, and that's because they have the Chavista T-shirt, so to speak, that
Exactly.
they're identified with the regime.
Exactly. But someday we'll do a show just on parallels, and people will be completely shocked at the road and the trajectory that we're going and headed towards.
I mean, as a final point, I mean, it's to me so dispiriting because the American era arguably began at the end of World War II. Starting in 1945, America was on top of the world. What you're saying is that if we follow the Venezuelan road, who knows, in a decade, maybe 2 decades, we could end up as not only losing our position in the front, but not even being in the front at all. And that would mean that the American era lasted from 1945 to, let's say, 2030, and our children and grandchildren will actually have a very different America.
And too many patriots from too many countries that witnessed this in their own countries came here to run away from that. So we have to work really hard that doesn't happen here.